Yeah.
And we're live. Hello, Miss Becky.
Hello, hello, my dear. How are you? Let me get my Instagram going over there. They
Absolutely.
they tend to end up to be a little bit slow on the going, but welcome everyone. Sorry we're a few minutes late. Little technical difficulty there. But
Always.
welcome. I know, right? Like I have always said, who ends up and decided to do a podcast on a Monday night?
I
I'm not
know.
sure whose idea that was, but
Do you realize it's the last Monday of March?
I know. Where is time gone? It's
I
just
know.
crazy. Crazy, crazy. This year's flying. Crazy. But anyway, happy Monday to everyone that is listening to all of our streaming platforms that we are live on tonight. Excited to have you here. Excited to have the guest. And for those of you that are listening to the audio only, happy Tuesday. Hopefully, your Tuesday is going well. But welcome to the Beyond Nutrition Community Podcast, a space where we slow down, we tune in, but we rebuild our health from the inside out. We are Coach Becky and Coach Sherri, and we're just two women who have been doing this, and we've been where you are. We relate to you, the overwhelm, the exhaustion, the disconnect from our own bodies, right? We lived it, and now we are here to rewrite those stories and not give just the quick fixes, but give that slow, steady healing that is sustainable and helps you to return what real health is. We're here to walk with you in trusting your body, honoring nature's rhythm and the circadian cycle, and create that sustainable health in every part of your healthy life. And this is the place for the honest conversations. We sometimes get very uncandid and yeah, very open. So creating that community it to remind you that you're not doing this alone. If you are craving that calm, the clarity, or a deeper connection, you have found the right place and the right people. And I don't know about you, Coach Sherri, but I am excited to have them here and hopefully they like, comment, and subscribe.
Absolutely. Well, guess what? Tonight we have a guest. So we are welcoming Phillip Meece, a combat medic who served in Afghanistan and returned with gut. Gosh, I don't even know how to pronounce that word. You'll have to help me on that one. After your, we'll make you repeat the story here in a moment. But after your health was derailed by the preservatives laden junk food and antibiotics, you set yourself to the task of making something better after you return to civilization. And by the way, thank you for your service. I could go on and on. You launched a Kickstarter in 2019. The rest has been history. The project was created by carnivores for carnivores. Uh, Today, you've had a whole host of things that your body went through, right? And so you're in remission from that. Also, you created Carnivore Bar. Becky and I both are fans of Carnivore Bar, and not just uh, from the few years that or just this year, but we've been fans for several years. Also, you were a sponsor of the Organuary Challenge, which I proudly won this year. So welcome.
Well, congratulations and thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me. Yeah, so it's been a roller coaster. I've been doing this 7 years. Like, where does the time go? But I did the carnivore bar because everything else was making me sick, especially the kind of food that you find on the go, like in a gas station or on a deployment. So, it's like, well, trying to figure out all the different things that can make you sick or all the things that you could react to, carnivore or animal based communities have found out that a lot of people do better by going on this elimination diet. And so I was intrigued by that and I tried it myself. Immediately felt much better. But then I felt like I couldn't leave my kitchen. So it's like, oh, well, I need to get creative here. And I bet there are other wonderful people out there who have the same problem. And so I launched the Kickstarter to launch the Carnivore Bar. And thank goodness for all of you who are passionate and supportive of us as we try to make food that's healthy to eat.
Absolutely. So, for those that don't know you, let's kind of go way back. I find this interesting from your childhood. So, you spent time in Mongolia. Your parents were missionaries, correct?
Correct.
So, that was kind of a foundation that you didn't even know happened. But tell the folks kind of let's go way back to little Philip.
Well, I've always been kind of a sickly kid. I had asthma when I was very little. When I went to Mongolia, it was kind of like I outgrew it. Um, and so it was right after the fall of the Soviet Union, and my family was trying to help rebuild, and my dad is a doctor, and so like they were helping out the best they could. And one of the things that they expect you to do is to go into a country like that and create jobs. So they were like, you need to hire people, you need to help boost the economy, and you need to help people help in your house. And they had never done that before, but they, said, oh, okay. So Tsitsig, our housekeeper, often made food for us. And all of the Mongolian food is animal based and high fat and high salt. So my dad is a doctor in the 90s, and this is truly mortifying. Um, but but at the same time, you want to be polite. You're going into new cultures, and so we know now, like they were ahead of the curve. But being that they were so like economically set upon by you know communism, that they they were coming out of this economic disaster, and they were very keen on hearing some of our ideas. So it was a good mission field to be in. My asthma suddenly cleared away. I got really lean. I got healthier than I've ever been in my life. We stayed there for 3 years, and I came back to eating American food and candy bars and Little Debbie's, and I immediately got my asthma back and just poofed up like boom, chubby, chubby little preteen. And I was like, man, what went wrong? And it wasn't till many, many years later where I kind of put two and two together, and it's like, these Mongolian ancestral cultures, high fat, animal based, they were really onto something.
Absolutely. So, like you said, you looked back, right? But did you even, when did it finally click from when you were a kid to an adult? When did that finally go, oh my goodness?
Well, there was always these like smoking guns. They were like, well, certainly this is bad for me. Like Little Debbie's, and so this is portion control. This is processed junk food. I just overdid it a little bit. I need to eat less and move more. And so when I got to college, I did a little bit better, but the asthma was still there. I still didn't know what was going on. I got really into exercise and movement, and through high intensity interval training, my asthma went away. And so I was like, oh, okay, so maybe I was just lazy. And then I didn't have asthma, so I was like, well, maybe I could, deploy. I could go and fulfill a dream of being a soldier. I always wanted to be a soldier or astronaut or a firefighter, one of those. And I was like, well, maybe I can do that now that my asthma's cleared away. So I was able to join and serve honorably. But when I came back from overseas, my gut was really messed up. And not only did the asthma come back, but I couldn't lose weight. I couldn't function. Like my mind was kind of chronically inflamed. My guts were chronically inflamed, and nothing could fix me. And so I was really at a loss, and I kind of spun my wheels there for 8 or 9 years. And then I saw Joe Rogan, the carnivore story from Jordan Peterson about Michaela. And I was like, holy crap, like that cleared up all these different things. It's like, I got to at least give that a try. And I tried it, and it was exactly the ticket I needed. And so from there, it was kind of like, oh, less is more. You know, I need to be careful what I eat these few safe things, and I can be as healthy as I was in all these other different circumstances. But if I venture too far out on the adventure curve, you know, it hurts me, and it's just not worth it.
So, were there any specific foods that you ate? Because both Sherry and I have both been carnivore. We've both been able to since add things in. But were there any specific foods like fermented, or that's one of the things we've had various people on, whether it be Sean or others that have talked about like bone broth as very gut healing, right? You said you had gut issues. The fattier side versus the leaner meats. Is there any that stand out as especially healing for you?
So for me, the fatty cuts are game changer. So pemmican, it's known for its shelf stability, and so I was trying to like combine my journey and what made me sick. It's like I don't really know exactly what made me sick in Afghanistan. There are a lot of different vectors. There's burn pits, there's chemicals, there's munitions, there's antibiotics, there's pesticides and preservatives. There's all kinds of stuff that I was exposed to. So I kind of have a cornucopia of potential causes. But I was leaning towards the combination of antibiotics and preservatives. And when I was eating carnivore, I noticed that if I ate too lean, that I would get anxiety. I'd get some of my mental health problems back. Like I just would feel low energy. I'd feel sluggish and kind of, I don't know, anxiety, for lack of a better word. And so just kind of not myself. And I noticed that if I ate high fat, most of the symptoms were, like I said in my bio, were in remission. Basically, it suppresses all the things that are hurting me. It doesn't necessarily make it so that I'm invincible or like some superhero, but like I can function. And for me, that's great. That's terrific. That's that's a huge blessing, and I'll take it. So for me, the pemmican, that high fat component, is a key component of the bar. It's 80% calories from fat. That's why I made it, so that I could go different places and I could keep that like mental protective effect of that high fat.
Awesome. Yeah, the fattier side ended up and worked initially for me, especially with like blood sugars and stuff. But I did have to add other things back in. Now, are you solely just carnivore, or do you incorporate other foods from time to time? Because I know you have the apple pie one, right? Or
Yeah.
the apple bar. Do you incorporate things like the apple or the honey? Because there's different levels of carnivore, right? So is that something that you incorporate?
Well, the movement has expanded, since 2019, and so we started with just beef tallow salt, and since then, people were starting to get into raw honey. Then people were getting into animal base with Paul Saladino's crew and all that. And then people were being adventuresome and trying fruit, which there's a strong evolutionary bias for like, okay, we were meant to eat fruit. In what quantities, in which types, in which species. It's a whole bag of worms. But some people were doing really well, or claimed to be doing really well on that and reintroducing things. And now even Michaela is reintroducing. I heard she ate some kind of green leafy vegetable the other day. So it's like, wow. So healing is possible. What's optimal though is of interest to me, because as a soldier, I'm thinking if you're stuck someplace and you're trapped nutritionally and you have to depend on the government to feed you, it's like, what would you want to be in that nutrition? And so for me, I'm venturing very carefully, methodically away from my safe place. Like, so beef tallow salt is safe, and I make an unsalted version.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what about 7 grams of raw honey, and so that's 7 grams of carbohydrates. And it's like, okay, well, that's okay. But then we do spices, then we do other things that some people tolerate and some people don't. Pluck is one of because we got connected because of Organuary. Some people don't do well with onion and garlic, but the onion and garlic are key flavor wise to masking the organ flavors. So, on one end, you're getting nose to tail nutrition. On the other end, you're getting a sulfur compound. Some people, they eat a little bit of garlic, they'll be burping it for days. And other people, it's like, oh, wow, my food has a soul. Like, this is worth eating and worth being alive for. So, there's all different types. And so we try to make a bar for lots of different people in little different states of their health journey.
So you really set out to make something for yourself, right?
Oh, yeah.
That was, and it's funny, Becky, if you think about, we've had Robert Sykes on and Keto Chow, and everybody has set out to make their own, right, for
Great
themselves.
guy.
Yeah, definitely. And it's turned into this business, right? So when was that light bulb like, oh my goodness, like maybe I should take this to market?
Well, it was me in my kitchen slaving away making pemmican every weekend. So pemmican is nothing special. It's just an obscene amount of hard work. So it's an attention to detail and a level of hard work that is just completely not made for the modern age. This is at least 300 years old, if not thousands of years old. It is the bow and arrow of food. So in the Western tradition, we typically use hermectants, like pulling out moisture. Think like over salting salted pork or salted cod, or ferments, like in Italy, like with different kinds of bacteria and yeast. They're trying to create the fermented sausages with this crust, kind of like cheeses, where they're letting go bad, but they're cultivating beneficial bacteria to create a certain set of relationships between the microbes to create different flavors. And, there's a lot of trial and error with that over hundreds and hundreds of years. But one thing I really liked about the Native American tradition is that it was a little bit older. It was a little bit more raw, unrefined. And what was key in that is there were 0 other ingredients. So it's just meat, literally just meat. There's no proprietary formula other than like a ridiculous, obscene amount of work. And so you have to crush and pulverize all of the meat. And you have to render out the fat. So all the collagen and all the like sinew and everything is out of the meat. All the water is out of the meat. And then you combine it in these certain ratios, and that keeps it sealed from oxygen. So then you have to package it in a way that seals it from oxygen and moisture continuously. So the whole packaging is a nightmare to get approved with food safety laws now, because they would have put this in rawhide leather, and they would have sealed it with the sacrificial cap of tallow, and then when they were ready to eat it, they'd crack it open and then throw away that tallow that's oxidized, and then you have pristine pemmican inside. But like, you can't just like take your bone needle and sew yourself a sinew bag and like sell a product. Like that's not gonna fly with modern food safety. So we had to work really hard on creating a metallized film that, once we've done all this hard work to get all the moisture out of this meat and not add anything, which is for me critical, then we have to keep it dry and keep it away from oxygen so it doesn't go rancid, it doesn't spoil, it doesn't mold. So that's really the magic, is putting in the time and effort. And it's why I say, for carnivores, by carnivores, because there's a lot of extra steps that we go to because we're carnivores that you just wouldn't think to ask a general manufacturer. But like, if you're a carnivore, you're like, oh yeah, of course you're going to use stainless steel everything. Of course you're going to do this. Of course you're going to do that. Of course you're not going to add, sealants, fluids, garbage, preservatives, antioxidant, and it's like, no, I'm going to seal it in stainless steel with a silicone gasket, by hand. By hand, I'm going to craft it, then seal it, and put it immediately. Then I'm going to run really fast, so it's not being exposed. Like, we have to do every single stage of our process in such a way that it'd be viable for carnivores. And that was a Herculean effort.
How long does that method usually take? So from beginning, right, of getting your meat sourced in, how long until the batch is sealed?
It takes about a week and a half.
So what it is?
So whether I'm making 1 bar or 10,000 bars, it takes a week and a half. So there's really like a scaling function. So that's why I wanted to do this like as soon as possible and get this scaled up, is not because I had this great money-making idea. It's because I wanted to escape my kitchen. Like, I wanted to pool our resources as a community so that I could leave my kitchen. I could have a weekend again, because, I was stuck in the system where, like, I'm making my own food. I make 5 pounds. It takes me a week to do it. It's like, okay, like, there's got to be a better way. Otherwise, it's just not worth it to leave the house.
How hard was it, let's go back, to source the clean ingredients, right? Was that impossible to find?
Yeah, so that's actually an interesting question. So the grass-fed, there's a couple different ideas in carnivore, and that's grass-fed, grass-finished, regenerative agriculture. The shining star of ecology and save the planet and most nutrient dense possible thing you could put in your body. And then there's eat the meat you can afford. If it's 0 carb, it's good enough. And so, there's these 2 different communities, and now they're branching into animal based and different kind of philosophies as people reintroduce. And it's like, well, this worked for me, or that worked for me, or this didn't work for me. And then troubleshooting all of that. But, there's 2 fundamental communities of regenerative agriculture, grass finished animals, which is very expensive. It's a lot longer that it takes to raise that animal. And then it doesn't get as fat because it's eating just like green leafy vegetables, to gain all of its weight. So it's out there on the field, sometimes even 6 months longer. So nearly half a year. So if you think about how long the farmer and the rancher has to commit to making grass-fed, grass-finished animals, it's a big commitment. And so it's unclear what the right answer is. People have told me that they are sensitive to commodity beef or sensitive to grass finish. Grass finish is aged a little bit longer. So the histamine content is slightly higher in the grass finished because they're aging to get the tenderness of the grain finished. The grain finished, the commodity beef, the eat the meat you can afford, doesn't need as much aging because it is innervated and marbled with the palmitic acid, the fat, because you've given it non-alcoholic fatty liver disease because you've made the animal quite sick in this last 180 days where you finished the animal. And so the animal is getting sick on grains, but it's oh so tasty for us. And it's like, well, is that important? Is that not important? So we've gone back and forth. And for the longest time, we've made this big commitment since 2021. We've only done the grass-fed, grass-fed, but that's actually changing this year. We are going to do both versions. We are going to do an everyday bar that should be less than half the cost.
Now, wait to give us that little tease there. Now, will it be available in all the flavors as well?
So we are going to do new flavors.
Ooh.
So when you do different breeds of cow, you have different flavor profiles. So one of the things I really liked about Joyce Farms is that it has this very mild flavor. But this is, I guess since this is time for announcements. I'll just go ahead and say, like, Joyce Farms kind of ended their grass-fed, grass-finished program. So I am doing two different big things. I'm doing a different version of grass-fed, grass-finished, which is going to have a slightly different palate experience for the OG bar. And then we're also doing the everyday bar. And so when we're experimenting with those different flavors, we've been doing different trials at in-person events and different different meetups as we go with community members to get their feedback on different flavors they'd like to see. And we have a blueberry lemon thyme in the everyday bar flavor that I think is going to be our new star hit. It's going to dethrone apple pie. So look forward to that.
And see, and I have yet to try the apple pie. I'm excited to end up and try it because I like the honey. I like the zesty garlic.
Mm-hmm.
The apple pie is a showstopper for sure. It's very, very modest in the amount of carbs we put in. So we keep in mind that people have gone through this journey, right? So like if you started from a standard American diet and you went straight to, a bar, you'd want like, 20, 30 grams of carbohydrates in there. So it was as sweet as the candy bar. And it's like, well, that's not really how we got here. And we want to respect like our community members. Like if you started with zero carb and then you went lion diet and then you're like, okay, my hormones are a little like, I'm just redlining everything. I need to like back it off and relax a little bit. It's like, okay, I've seen that work and not work for people. And if it's working for you, great. God bless. So for those people who it's working to reintroduce things, it's good not to go whole ham or go crazy, like go on the sugar diet. I've seen a lot of people bonk on the sugar diet because they just go too fast. It's like even Mark went slow on the sugar diet. He eased into it, and it's like I think people need those transitionary tapers, even if they're going to try something radically different than what they did before. Like, and I think that's why communities like this are so helpful because you gals like talk through these things. You talk to all these people, and you're like, okay, what are we doing, and why are we doing it? Let's get the lowdown.
Well, and that was the big thing for me. I spent 2.5 years as solely carnivore and coaching under Sean, and when I started to reintroduce, it was simply just the other fats, right? I didn't even start with food. It was just putting things like olive oil back in there, putting, the plant fats, right? And then I went into those foods that went with the plant, right? Yeah, it was a slow transition. I didn't go to, the 40% carbs that I've currently been eating for the last year straight out of the gate from carnivore. It was a slow transition. And I think that's the big thing for anyone, if they are going to start, is to do it slow and do it with real foods, right? The whole sugar diet movement just has me shake my head, but
I can see it working. I just think that you gotta have labs, you gotta have a coach, you gotta have a plan, and you should do it sensibly. If you can try to ease into it a little bit more fruit, I could see that working. But maybe you need to increase your activity. Maybe you need to increase your sun. There are just sensible things that go with that plan rather than just like, screw it, I'm going to eat gummy bears all day.
Exactly. And that's where a lot of people were getting to. That's the point, they would end up at sea, like you said, Mark Bell with, some sugar, right? I think it was the Swedish fish, or I don't know what he had in necessarily, but that's how they would start to incorporate. And I'm like, it's not jumping into processed sugar foods. It's whole foods. And yeah, we teach a lot of circadian rhythm and, just that whole side of things. But there's so many ways to do it. The biggest thing I think people need to do is exactly what you did. You listen to yourself. You listen to your body. You knew what you could tolerate, and you created a lifestyle from that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you we all have to understand that we're in a game for attention. And so like these carnivore influencers are also in that game. If you actually listen to Mark Bell's podcast, 90% of what he was eating was sensible. And then he put on the gram the bag of Swedish fish or whatever. So it's like, or the nerd cluster, different thing. He'll put the most sensational thing that he ate that day on the media, but like then you look at the 4 hours of like cardio he did, and then the weight training, and like he's also on supplements and different things that help his performance. So he's very candid about that. But people want to take a snapshot and call it a plan. It's like, no, I mean, you got to hear people out. We're all competing for the sensational whatever. We're going to do good clip art for, please tune in. Please come and listen to us. But like, understand that we're going to clip the most interesting frame for that, clickbait. And so you got to have to be aware of that and stay to hear the whole story, because I'm sure there are sacrifices that you may not be willing to endure in order to make that clickbait worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I'm a type 2 diabetic, right? And when I seen the sugar diet, I wanted to have cardiac arrest, because it's like most people can't, most of our clients, Becky and mine, they're coming off of the American diet, right? The processed foods and all that. And then they see somebody over here eating a sugar diet, and it's like, don't pay attention to that, right? You're not there. You're not metabolically sound enough to handle something like that. Um, so going back, so as you did a kickstart. So talk about the kickstart that you did, because that was interesting.
So Kickstarter is basically a crowd funding program. So the crowdfunding program is basically, you get an idea. Say like you have an idea for a better backpack, and you say, okay, folks, here's the features of the backpack. Here's all the awesome things it can do. I've sewn this prototype from Walmart bags in my in my garage. Would you like me to make it into a real life product? And so then they say yay or nay. They'll fund it or don't. And if you don't meet your goal, your funding goal, then they give everyone's money back. So they just put a reserve on your credit card. And then if it reaches the goal in like the 30 days or whatever, you have enough interest. So it's a way to prove the market. It's a very entrepreneurial kind of attempt where you're trying to say like, okay, is there enough interest for me to make this? Rather than me go to some bank and get a loan, which they won't do, to make a product I don't know if anybody wants, I can kind of pre-vet that market and say, okay, how many carnivores are interested in this, would buy this? Because if the number is like me and my mom, like I gotta go back to the drawing board. Like, but if there's more people, if they all pool in and buy this pemmican, for travel emergencies or whatnot, then it can be worth it, or at least break even to make it into a real commercial business. And so we've been on that fight ever since.
So how did you and Chef James Berry first connect and partner with using his seasonings?
Well, I was not the most polite. I didn't really ask. I just was a huge fan and said, this is amazing. I'm going to use it. And James was just, or he was just so encouraging and so gracious, and said, that's awesome. I love when people use my seasoning for amazing new things. It'd be perfect for a product like this. And, at the time, um, we were hesitant to add flavors because I didn't want to feel like I was selling out. This was 2023. And so I was like coming out of my shell, getting more adventuresome. I added raw honey, and I was like, well, I don't know how I feel about that, but I do want to stay in business, and there's a diminishing return on just selling like burger meat that you can put in your pocket. So I'm like, okay, I might need to make something a little bit more interesting. And I saw Pluck, and I was seeing all these like nose to tail kind of movements, and I was like, well, shoot, this would be perfect, because I tried adding just pure organs without any flavor at all. Wow. No. So it did not taste good. It tasted really, really bad. Really like wet dog flavored. Especially if you got a blend of organs. But the grass-fed, grass-finished animals, their organs are even more pungent than you're thinking of. Like, we've all seen liver and onions, and I know as kids, at least, we've like, turned our nose up at that. And it's like, well, you haven't seen nothing yet. You get a grass-fed, grass-finished liver. Not only is it beautiful, but it is pungent. And so modern audiences are not ready. They are not. They're not prepared. So Pluck was like this golden key, which I was like, oh, this is amazing. I mean, the organ pill companies are doing great. People like organs. They feel good when they eat them. But man, oh man, you just can't taste. You just don't want to taste them. Hence the pills doing well. So Pluck is this way for us to get that nutrition in the bar. And I'm thinking, like, if I'm on a desert island and the bar is all I have, I know that I'm getting most of my bases with just like beef and tallow. But like, I don't know that I'm getting all my micronutrients. And so the question there is like, okay, well, what am I maybe missing? If I eat nose to tail, I feel pretty confident that I'm getting everything that I need. There's still some debate, but I feel like I'm getting warmer. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, interestingly, I don't know if you know Michael Coomer.
Yeah, yeah.
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 So Becky and I both were using his products, his organ meats and, the pills. And I had some blood work done, and they came back and they said, "Oh my goodness, your iron is like really high. Are you taking iron?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not taking any iron. Like, what are you talking about?" And it took me another week to figure out it was from taking the supplements. And yeah, and so I had to cut that out, and then I just moved on to the pluck seasonings, right? And I have that whenever, but yeah, but people don't test, right? They don't get their blood tested, and
Exactly.
they don't know what's going on. So it was an eye opener. Remember that, Becky, when
I
we were
do.
like, we were baffled. What in the world? And that's what it was.
Yeah. We were
They can
going.
really move the labs. And that's so good that you did the testing, because if you're not doing the testing, you have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we always say, test, don't guess. I'm not saying that, everyone, but that was one of the other things that I used as I was progressing through was the lab work. Cause I'm like, you can argue with my point of view all you want, but you can't necessarily argue with the black and white of lab work, right? I
Exactly.
mean, so yeah, it was one of the things that I used, but between, all the other pluck seasonings, and I know you said you had the blueberry lemon thyme one coming out. That's exciting because I love lemon and blueberries. But are there any other flavor collaboration or companies that you've kind of looked into to give like limited editions?
So we're always open-minded. But basically trying to make the bar more cost effective is our current mission this year. So 2025 was absolutely dreadful for beef. Like our person that we work with, Joyce Farms, is basically discontinuing their program. They still have a beef program, but it's not the same breed. And it's not the same finishing. And I'm sure it's great, but like we have been harping from day one on grass-fed, grass-finished regenerative agriculture. So in 2025, that market really kind of broke, and it got really, really unaffordable. A lot of people importing from Australia and different countries where it's more economical to raise animals that way. But at the end of the day, I still believe in it, and I found someone doing it for an affordable price with a flavor that I love, that I think a lot of customers aren't going to notice the difference. It's just like sticklers who are going to notice the difference. And that's coming up in a couple of months, that shift. And we'll do more announcements then. But my passion, I think, is really shifted in making this affordable. So I really think that we abandoned our grain finished idea back a few years ago, because it got too hard to figure out. But I think that the market for tallow has increased to such a degree that I've been able to find a really good grass finished tallow at an affordable price made by someone else. It's not exactly what I would do in the fancy bar, because I like to control everything and make it all perfect. But when you outsource different parts of the task, there's huge savings because they can do it at an economy of scale that you just can't compete with in a tiny little factory like ours. And so, or a meat plant or whatever you want to call us, it's like a passion project. But, so trying to think about how to make it more efficient, how to make it more affordable. The everyday bar is I think what we're going to focus on, because, to put it into perspective, I think our blueberry bar is going to be like $6 a bar. So, I mean, radically more affordable. The fat soluble vitamins are going to be the same quality of the carnivore bar, almost identical. And then the meat is going to be, it's going to be grain finished, but a lot of those changes in that animal, that finishing, affect the fat, not the lean tissue. The lean tissue takes longer to change than it does the fat. The fatty acids change really fast. The lean muscle tissue, it took the animal like a year to grow that. In the last few months of feed is not going to change noticeably the composition of that muscle, because the animal weighs a lot, still has to move a lot of its own weight, even if it's not moving a lot. And so that muscle quality is going to be pretty high. And I think that is going to unlock what is my dream, is providing soldiers food. I think that if I make this perfect pemmican that is so bougie and so fancy that no one can afford it, it's like, okay, well, how will I ever get this into the army for grunts who are making, a very modest wage? Like, they don't make a lot per hour if you depending on how you calculate it, but they have a lot of their needs met, their housing, et cetera, et cetera. They don't have a lot of expenses, but they're on a tight budget as far as their discretionary expenditure, and they can't afford to buy a luxury product. So making the carnivore bar and animal-based nutrition and high-quality fat food available to everyone, I think, is what we're going to be focusing on this year.
It might help if I unmute, right? So, yeah. And I know that's kind of your passion, is being able to go back to the servicemen and women, right? And give them that resource that you absolutely did not have.
Exactly.
So, and I love that.
Well, it made me really sick. And I watched a lot of other soldiers get mentally unwell and then stop sleeping,
Yeah.
and then have all sorts of other joint problems, gut problems, just kind of fall apart. It's like, well, I mean, war is tough. It's hard on you. But, if we start with a base of good nutrition, I bet it would be less hard. And so, let's fix what we can fix. I don't know what's going to happen with Iran and boots on the ground there, and that's all scary. But I want to make sure that people are getting the support they need wherever horrible life situations they find themselves in. And it's true for soldiers because soldiers are uniquely vulnerable. But there are many, many other people who find themselves in dire straits where all they have to eat is a vending machine or something they brought with them. So like that, like Coach Becky was saying with that third suitcase, the savior suitcase. It's like going on a cruise. It's like you need to find little hacks, ways for you to keep yourself healthy, to keep yourself on track, whether it's what you've eliminated or what you've gained or what you've added back. It's like what works for you, what your body is telling you you need, like don't be without it. And I'm very passionate at enabling people to take their health journeys to wherever they end up going in life.
And that's where I really feel like, the grab and go food, right? We are all so active. I know I've had my coaching clients end up and ask me, is this something, that you end up and you consume every day? Well, for me, it's not, right? Because again, going back to what you said, I have control of my controllables, right? When I'm
Mm-hmm.
at home, but when I'm traveling, that's a whole different, ball game, right?
Exactly.
And I don't have that control, and so I make sure that I have those grab and go options, right? Because a lot of times, like you said, the convenience stores, the fast food, just all the junk that is around us that has no nutrients, has no nutrition value. But I think the big thing too is you brought up the price of the bars, right? And you're trying to keep those affordable. But what many people don't end up and also take into consideration is the amount of meat that is in it, right? There's a half a
Exactly.
pound. If you went out to buy an 8-ounce steak, right, what are you going to end up and be spending? $40 at least, probably for an 8-ounce, steak dinner.
Yeah.
So, if not
And
more.
it's ready to eat.
Mhm.
So meat doesn't usually come ready to eat unless you're going to like gnaw into a cow. It's like there's a whole lot of people you have to pay in between to kill it, to cut it, to process it, to cook it, to prepare it. And so when you're talking about pemmican, there's a different cost metrics, for their labor. They didn't have good ways, especially the people who popularized pemmican, the Metzy people. They, were the sons and daughters of French traders and Native American women. So they were not welcome in Native American communities, and they were not welcome in European communities. So they were like shit out of luck. So they had to like figure out a way to make a way for themselves in the world, and they took entrepreneurial ideas of their father and the wisdom of the ancient practices of their mother, and they made pemmican and they put it on the map. They're probably the only reason we know it exists today. Like there are so many ancient technologies that we've forgotten about, but we know of pemmican because it was a huge commodity for French traders who were hunting beaver pelt. The Hudson Bay Company, Great Lakes, that kind of area, like they were going down into the plains and they fought wars over pemmican because it was allowing French traders not to have to stop and like make camp and then hunt and then do like the whole 9 yards. They could just go deep into territory where other traders hadn't been, get fresh pelts and get back out while not losing like 30 pounds every trip. Like you go ruck marching into the wilderness, like you're going to lose weight. You're burning an insane amount of calories. Like you're really working hard. And it's like, well, how do you sit down and prepare food? No one's going to make you a sandwich. Like you, you have to, and so it was making the difference. It was making it economical. It was making that whole trip possible and profitable. And so the Metzy people, the men would hunt, the women would process the meat. They might spend hundreds and hundreds of hours on pemmican making. Devote their whole day, their whole week, their whole month, their whole lives to this art of making pemmican, and making just a tiny fraction of what that French trader would would be willing to pay for it for his beaver pelts for the Europeans who were buying the beaver at the end of the supply chain. So, they were part of that pipeline of like, well, how do we survive all these cultures that don't want us, that are hostile to us? It's like, and they found a way. They got creative, they got to work, and they busted their butts doing some of the most brutal work that I've ever seen in food preparation to make this superfood that's shelf stable for decades.
I asked so when we met you a couple years ago at Hack Your Health, I think my husband asked you how long your product lasted.
So it is the same thing, except it's
Mhm.
way way cleaner and
Right.
way way drier.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, it gets into the weeds legally with like what we want to claim. I tend to say it should last 25 years. Um, but shelf stability tests take about 4 years to do. And so then I'm in a dilemma, just speaking candidly,
Mhm.
of like, okay, well, I'm coming out with a new flavor. I change the ingredients. Do I do a new 4 year shelf study for the new ingredient every time? Do I do a shelf life study on the base ingredients and then extrapolate?
Mhm.
Because every time I change something, it kind of begs the question. At the end of the day, what I do is I test every single batch of lean meat and every single batch of final bar, and I make sure the water activity are insanely low. The water activity is basically how food safety has up, like, organizationally, the USDA makes sure that food is safe. And they say that you have to get 0.85 on your jerky. So we routinely get um, under zero point 0.3. So zero point 0.00 is the vacuum of space, 0.99 is water. Water activity is a measure of available water vapor pressure. And so, we're very, very, very low. We're too low for mold to grow. And so that I feel like all things being equal and physics being true, the physics of the universe aren't going to change anytime soon. So there isn't a mechanism where which it should spoil. The wrapper, as long as it's not punctured, takes like 1,000 to 2,000 years to degrade. Um, and the oxygen and moisture that go through it are 0.00000, like six zeros, four for oxygen, and then like 9 zeros for water. And so it's very, very, very impermeable, like impermeable. So, and that OTVR and MTVR is oxygen transfer,
Mhm.
like oxygen vapor transfer rate over like a sheet, like 100 square inches squared. How many grams of oxygen per hour would go through it, providing you have like a giant tent worth of material. So on a wrapper like this, you have, probably 100th of that tarp surface area. And then I also sell it in an ammo can,
Mhm.
which is sealed from oxygen and moisture, and it has a gasket. It's a NATO spec can. So just me being a soldier, I'm like, well, these things are perfect for bullets because bullets in the food have the same requirements. Oxygen and moisture need to stay away from them. And it also prevents like rodents from getting into it. So I sell it in an ammo can. It is insanely shelf stable. Um, Advanced food scientists couldn't come up with a reason for why it would spoil, given those criteria. It's just always a question for them, like, well, why would you do that? Why would you go to that much trouble? And it's like, well, you don't understand. It's a long story.
I love that. Yeah, and we actually have carnivore bars set back in our emergency food.
Right?
We do. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, when I have to brag, so I'm going to go ahead, keep talking. So I recorded opening the box that I got from the Organinuary that you sent. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to
Awesome.
go ahead and add that and go ahead and keep talking. But look at the insane amount of carnivore bars. That's not just three, there's six in there. Of each one. And it was like, I'm going to be eating these forever. And then my husband said, let's put some back for our emergency food. So we're going to do that as well. But look at that. It just keeps going.
Nice. Well, we want it to be a real reward. It's like there are so many different brands that work with James on that. It's important that the community support each other, and that's what I try to do. That's why we work with so many affiliates. We sign people up pretty readily if they're just genuine. Like there's no like, you have to have 10,000 followers. It's like, no, if you could benefit from this and someone else who could benefit from it, like let's share the love. So we do giveaways, we do competitions, we do meetups, and the reason being is that we're nothing without our community. Like I don't make this. I started making this for myself, but now I don't make this just for myself. I make this for hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are my in tight spots. Like there's email every week from different people, like flight attendants or pilots who are like, this is a lifesaver, and they would buy it at any cost. And they're like, this is so valuable. There's nothing that suits my needs like this. And I'm stuck in the air, like with nothing to eat. And it's like, okay, this is my saving grace. It's like there are people who are on oil rigs. There are people who are stuck on long shifts without availability to prepare their food. And it's like, I think that if you have the budget for it and you really love regenerative agriculture, then there's an opportunity with the Carnivore Bar for you to support it. And if you can't, stay tuned for the Everyday Bar, because I feel like that's going to be something that everyone's going to have. And if you have an ammo box full of OG carnivore bars, just think about having like 2 or 3 ammo boxes of everyday bars to supplement it, just in case. It's like, that's going to be a dream come true for preppers, soldiers, and your everyday carnivore who would love to eat carnivore bars every day, but saves them for those emergency trips because it's prudent to do so at the current price.
Yeah, definitely. So I do have an affiliate with you. So you can, for the audience, you can use code HEALING, HEALING. And thank you for that. Definitely. So we've got a few rapid fire questions I thought would be fun to kind of wrap this up. So if you
You?
could eat one cut of beef the rest of your life, what would it be?
Hmm. Think skirt steak. I'm really feeling skirt steak.
Awesome. I like skirt steak. It's good. One thing that you wish every American understood about nutrition.
That it's being eroded away for profit in America.
The most underrated ancestral food.
Well, that one's easy. Pemmican.
There you go.
what's what's the speaking of that? What's the hardest lesson you learned while building the carnivore bar?
Well, that it's not enough just to be passionate, that I do need to figure out how to run a business. And so I am exactly who I say I am. I'm the soldier. I'm a medic. And I have no prior experience. So learning how to run a business has been humbling and very challenging, and but also a privilege to serve the community and gain new skills and rise to the occasion.
What is one habit that changed your health forever?
Interesting. One habit. I think mindfulness, being easy on myself. For me, I'm religious, so prayer is kind of how that manifests in my life. Like I did not realize how talking ill of myself and, putting myself down and being so cruel and harsh could affect my physiology. And so realizing that I need to be kind to myself and encourage myself as if I were someone else that I was responsible for caring for. Like if I had it's some young man to encourage, I would not treat them the way that I tend to treat myself. And it's like, why am I doing that? I'm shortchanging the gains that I could make, the strength that I could grow. It's like I should not do that. So that's been the biggest health effective. Be good to yourself. Give yourself grace and work hard and pray.
Absolutely. And what's funny is that was pretty much the same with Robert Sykes too. And I think we are kind of a, society that we really do have to put emphasis in that. We've put emphasis in so many of the other areas that has really lacked for many. So I support you on that as well. If you could redesign one military ration, what would it be?
Well, for me, the MRE is the most important because in the DFAC, you have passionate cooks who work tirelessly to do the best with limited supplies. But as soon as you get away from the base, like you're on your own, the field rations suck. They have ribbits, they have cigarettes, they have dip, and they have soda. And it's just, that's not a balanced diet, and if you are fighting a war that needs to be won, if you're fighting against an enemy who truly wants to destroy you and has the means and capability, you don't know how long you're going to be out there. You should not be eating trash.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything else you would love to add? And also tell the folks where they can find you.
Well, you can find us at carnivorebar.com. We're the Carnivore Bar and most of the socials. Instagram seems to be our most popular, but we have Facebook, TikTok. We have a Facebook group called The Campfire. So you can find us anywhere you're looking. And we share memes, we share information, and we try to share community successes and collabs. What you guys have to say about us is important. Not every company cares, but the Carnivore Bar will always be a company that listens to its customers. And I think that's what I want to end with is that, we'll always be a people first company. And so don't be afraid to let us know how we could do better.
Well, we would love to have you back as you get closer to releasing some of the teasers that you've given us tonight. Feel free to come back anytime at all because your product is very worthwhile. Like I said, Becky and I both use it, so we can attest to it. So anything else you want to add, Becky?
Nope, I think you pretty much nailed it. Again, Phillips, thank you for joining us. And for anyone else, if this episode inspired you, make sure that you do check out the carnivorebar.com and use code healing to grab yourself a couple bars, because like I said, it's great to end up and have. I have them in case I'm traveling for the weekend or I've flown with them. So I took them even on cruise ships and didn't have any problem with them. But make sure you like, subscribe. Even if you leave comments here, we will make sure, Philip ends up and gets those and has the ability to read those as well. So we're just trying to spread the message of nutrient dense, ancestral, and quality first with foods to move people away from that commercial grocery store shelf type food. So appreciate
Thanks
it.
so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Have a wonderful